So in this segment, I want to discuss a little bit about the situation with the water regulator, which is being essentially replaced by a new regulator because Ofwat has been complete, not like just awful. Ofwat has not done its job. There are um, one of the things the Conservatives did is kind of weaken regulators a lot, but you do have other things like regulatory capture where these people go to work in industry effectively, and sometimes they leave industry, join Ofwat, etc. But I think the same needs to be done for Ofgem and a lot of the other regulators who simply are not doing their jobs properly. I think this should be just the start.
Government has lost control of this industry. Let's face it, we had a situation last Thursday where the chief executive of Southern Water defied the bonus ban. The company doubled his salary. On Friday, we had a situation where a 60% increase in serious pollution incidents. And yesterday, government, in the lead up to this, was laying claim to a whole raft of initiatives that were actually things put in place under the previous Tory government. I'm afraid today I had no expectations for this at all, and today I've not been disappointed. So John, I think, has confused this issue. He seems to feel that this is an issue of public trust, where in reality, at the beating heart of this debacle is that corporate greed, the financial engineering, the exorbitant salaries, all of the £84 billion worth of our money water companies have made off with.
So yeah, there's I think a study done recently that showed that £84 billion has been siphoned off from essentially the customer, via dividends and things like that. And the question is, like, the government are putting more laws in place or are working on putting more laws in place. I think it's pretty past, in order to stop company directors from getting bonuses, which when they're dumping water, and as kind of this guy points out here, it's not worked. So are the government, is the regulator going to take these companies to court? What happens here? Because it looks like they've broken the law. So where do we go from here?
We were needed, we were promised a proper written branch, wide-ranging review, including ownership and structure. We were promised champagne. All we've actually got is sour milk.
So yeah, that's a funny saying, but he's not wrong. And the thing is, the Labour Party are in the pocket, I think, of the water industry anyways, because they used analysis from the water industry to say how much nationalisation would actually cost.
Has Ofwat failed?
Yes. I mean, I think I haven't met anyone who I've talked to, and I've met over 250 different organisations over the last 9 months, been around the country, huge call for evidence. I haven't met anyone who thinks the system of regulation we have now is working. I think there are reasons why Ofwat has failed. For many years, they didn't have the powers they actually needed to monitor what water companies were doing.
They'd also have problems where they would go to court and it would take years in order to get the cases heard for pollution. I think some of them took like 4 or 5 years, when maybe they should set up special courts where they could look into this stuff a lot quicker.
They were bluntly encouraged by government to go for lighter touch regulation, so they stopped checking whether companies were building the infrastructure they said they would build.
And who made Ofwat bandits without the shareholders?
And also they've pursued an approach to regulation which, while it worked well in the early years after privatisation, really hasn't kept up with the demands on the water system and all the things we require from water companies now as the pressures on the infrastructure grow, and we have to really invest for.
Yep. This is Tim Farron discussing this.
6 years ago, when the Liberal Democrats led the campaign from the beginning on cleaning up our waterways.
Now, I'm not going to be mean, but this was a guy who was also part of the coalition who massively, underfunded the regulators and things like that, and that has played a longer term impact on the way these regulators have handled things.
We were sort of sneered at and derided by both Labour and the Conservatives, who said this wasn't a very big issue. We have persisted because not only is sewage spills in our waterways disgusting, unacceptable, it's also the sign of a broken industry where very powerful people have run rings around the regulators and effectively stuck 2 fingers up at the British people. 5, 6 years on, we see a report now which includes many of the things we've been asking for all along. So look, it'd be very churlish of me not to welcome lots of what Sir John Cunliffe is saying today, in particular what looks to be the creation of a single regulator. We said all along that if Ofwat remained in either name or nature, then there would have been a failure here. But
Yeah, they're fusing, I think it's Ofwat with the Environmental Protections Agency with another agency as well.
Making sure that we wrap all the regulators in one powerful regulator is the way of making sure the water companies don't run rings around the regulators and don't basically take the mickey out of the people who pay the bills.
So isn't it time then to give the government credit for what they're doing, actually fixing the problem?
Well, my job, I guess, as an opposition spokesperson, I think, is to be a constructive opponent to the government. So we've nagged and chivied and campaigned for years to get to them where they are today. It would be wrong of me, just not very nice of me, ungracious of me, not to say well done for the things that they have done well. But all we're seeing now is the top lines of a report from Sir John Cunliffe. We've not seen any new bill to Parliament from the government. So we've got to be very constructive now, keep opposing them, keep challenging them, coming up with ways in which they can put this into practice cleverly. We haven't seen the details. We've heard
Now it's time to put pressure on the government to do the right thing and make the regulator as strong as possible in order to deal with the sewage dumping and the rampant kind of culture of giving company bonuses to people with high salaries and things who don't deserve it.
things about, for example, the creation of a new water ombudsman. That's a very interesting proposal. Of course, the danger is it could end up diluting the power of the new regulator and, again, fragmenting the regulatory framework. We don't know much about how they're going to police these targets. For instance, in the last water bill last year from the government, we saw promises to get rid of bonuses, huge bonuses from chief executives and the like, and yet only very recently we saw that Southern Water managed to very easily get around that by simply doubling the salary of their chief executive. So we need to be full on the scrutiny of this to make sure.
Because again, these rules were made up by a party that were in the pocket of the water industry. I think it was Steve Reed who, got tickets and things like that. So of course they're not going to do it that strictly. Why do you think the politicians get bribes?
These aren't just interesting headlines, but they come into practice in a way which actually protects the quality of our waterways.
I wonder, it's never usually helpful looking back on things that have gone on, previous years, but in coalition with the Conservatives.
Oh my God, she's going to do it. Oh my God, that's crazy. I thought this was going to be washed, but nah.
Do you feel, honestly, that it was a mistake or you have regret over not really pursuing everything that you're outlining today?
We did. Bear in mind, of course, that a certain thing happened after the coalition ended, that we left the European Union. And the European Union provided us with a regulatory framework.
Okay, this is an issue because this goes way further than Brexit, because of the fact that this is about water companies not building reservoirs and things like that. The sewage dumping is, I think, a direct consequence of Brexit on two levels. One, the water company saying, oh, we can't get the chemicals in, and the government saying, okay, that's fine. And the other being like the EU were working towards more kind of clean water regulations and things like that. So he's not 100% wrong here. But also that, the infrastructure wasn't invested in. That wasn't the fault of Brexit. That was because these water companies just kept lying to the regulator and things like that and saying, oh, yeah, of course, yeah, we're working on it. And they just didn't, or they would overpay massively on purpose and then bill the customer. So this whole thing is just disingenuous.
Thing happened after the coalition ended, that we left the European Union, and the European Union provided us with a regulatory framework. The Conservative government that's just gone tore up completely. So it was a completely different world. We were in a situation then where we had adequate regulation, or at least far better regulation than we have now. In the last 5-6 years, we've been trying to persuade governments of different colours.
Yeah, no, I don't like this. The thing that the Lib Dems need to remember is the coalition government wasn't that long ago. I was a young G back then. I'm not such a young G anymore. But the coalition government did start a lot of the damage that we are seeing now. Definitely got the ball rolling on it. So this is one of the things where the Lib Dems should have cleaned house a little bit after the 2015 coalition. But kind of. I hope that Tim Farron and the rest of the Lib Dems do put a lot of pressure on the Labour government in order to make sure they can get as strong a regulator as possible. And any situations where the Labour government are being a bit dodgy in terms of donations, aka bribes, I hope that gets called out. And I would seriously look at the politicians in charge now, the minister in charge now, and look at where his analysis came from on that £100 million figure to nationalise the water industry. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.